Thank you for joining me today for Social Media and Teen Services webinar by Jessica Calloway. The purpose of this webinar is to go over social media and teen services for youth librarians and any professional person who deals with teens, because social media is an essential service that we need to provide in any teen activity that we do. And the way that we do this is we break this down into 3 parts. We explain what social media it is, why it's important, and different ways that you can incorporate it within your services. So the idea is, what is social media? Well, it's a social site that involves users to view and transverse their connections, view unique identifiable profiles, and create and interact with user-generated content. What does that mean? It means it's allowing individuals to create a profile, which may be public or semi-public, within a system. And they articulate a list of other users with whom they share a connection, and view and transverse the list of connection and those made by others with the systems, which means this is where teens are having their social connection. These are the platforms where teens are interaction with each other. And this is primarily done through 4 areas. It's done through the use of Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So why is this important? This is important because social media has 3 aspects that really affect teens. The idea is that the role of technology is prominent in teens' life. Teens' relationships and developments can be determined by social media. And also, social media plays a role in how information is absorbed by teens. And it's because technology is a part of everyday life. In today's society, technology is rarely absent. Teens are spending so much more time on the computer via the internet. And since teens are spending most of their time interacting with the media, homework on the computer, they are experimenting and experiencing relationships in an online setting, and these settings being social media platforms. Thus, the most important part about social media is that it is establishing the where and how teens are connecting to the world and building relationships. And relationships are such a vital aspect when you're talking about teens. And the reason being is that teens are driven by relationships. The role of social media is because it is interacting with teen development. As we mentioned, teens are driven by relationships. They are looking towards their peers for acceptance and guidance, which makes peer relationships significant to their growth. And teens gravitate towards these programs because friends relationships. And what important to note about these online interaction is that tech skills are being developed when youth are able to engage online. Thus, while social media may have started with an entertainment value, it is also becoming educational. For instance, with the use of social media, teens live in a highly visual world, and that has resulted in a plethora of visual stimulation that was never there before. Therefore, for them to plan for their future, teens must cultivate skills to create this visual stimulation, because it is how they are interacting with the world, which means that teens are taking on more responsibility now more than ever before to incorporate technology into their lives, because it helps them to enrich their future prospects. Hence, to be prepared for jobs and experiencing the world, teens must develop well-rounded tech skills to succeed, which is why it's such a driving motivation and interest to them. Thus, social media is a way to access informal learning opportunities. And as mentioned, social media is where teens are looking for information. So it is important to talk about engagement. Youth engage with their interests via social media and digital technology, and we just established that it is an interest to them to learn these skills. And thus, engagement has become a key element for libraries to immerse themselves with youth. Part of the reason why is because, as mentioned, teens have increasingly more visual context in their life, such as content from the internet and an aesthetic evolution that is constant because it ratchets up interest and engagement. This results in teens and most of new adults to be power browsers. This means that they skim for quick wins because, with the whole world on the internet, there is little time for contemplation. And it's the idea that to avoid overload, teens are only looking at quick bursts of information to see if there's a hook that grabs their attention. If something doesn't hook them in, they're not going to look at something. So power browsing is really important when you're talking about marketing, and that is going to lead us to the idea of how to incorporate social media within the library, because marketing is an aspect, as is programming. Incorporating social media into our programming is going to allow us to teach us the skills that we were talking about with teens. The idea that social media engages. So marketing is needed to grab their attention. That we need those power browsers, we need those quick quips to hook teens into the library services. That without that, we're never going to be able to reach this population. And then additionally, creating social media and programming teaches those tech skills that we were talking about. And it's really important to make sure that it's in a social environment, because we were talking about how important peer relationships are to teens. To establish those peer relationships, you need to have a social environment to be able to do that. So when it comes to marketing, there are 3 aspects of marketing that really need to be acknowledged. You need to know your audience. Who are you speaking to? Information seeking behaviors. How and where do your audience seek information? And you need to understand social capital. How do we gain that social status that's going to make us the cool kids or the cool area that teens want to come to for the library? And marketing is going to help us establish that. And the first thing, as we mentioned, is know your audience. And the reason being is because whoever you are speaking to is going to determine behavior norms. How is it that teens are seeking information? What are teen behavior norms? And we've talked about that one of the most important aspects to keep in mind is going to be that teens are seeking interaction and information primarily through social media. They are seeking information through social media. And the reason being is that they have a particular behavior norm that determines informational seeking behaviors, and it is based on their informational needs and wants. Their needs and wants are social media. And then with that in mind, that's going to determine their informational seeking behaviors. It's the idea, as mentioned, peer relationships are extremely influential in the teen's life. And we're going to keep coming back to this. And part of the reason why is because social capital plays an important role with information seeking within the teen demographic. Saving and keeping face is critical in maintaining social status. Social status being that social capital. And social capital takes precedent over acquiring or even seeking information for physical self-needs and cognitive self-needs. Therefore, social needs are primarily within the framework of a teen, and social capital influences teen decision-making and information-seeking behavior. The behavior being looking for information on social media more than anywhere else. This is a large reason as to why social media has such influence, because it is a social environment where social status is being determined. Therefore, if we do not incorporate social media into our marketing, we are not going to be reaching teens, because we will not gain any social capital or social status among teens, which means there will be no conversation between their peer relationships. So how do we gain social capital? We're talking about it. What teens get alike on social media, they get a rush, which creates a physiological need that keeps teens coming back to fulfill their needs in the same way. Therefore, for libraries to reach the teen demographic, we must establish social capital for ourselves. And therefore, by doing this, we want to making marketing where we seem like the cool place for teens to be interacted and seen. This is going to include implementing aesthetic needs and the power browsing framework that we talked about. And because this is going to allow teens to gain social status and get the likes and attention needed for teens to be aware of our services and programs. This is because teens need to create their own connections, but they live in a world where information and entertainment are presented in fast, short bursts. That's the power browsing that we were talking about. So we need to use social media aesthetically in short and eye-pleasing view that will attract teens' personal and peer interests that will get their attention. And what I've done is that I've provided some examples that worked very well that I have placed myself. I've blocked off the library logo and I've attached marketing photos from events that I've done that I got considerable reactions online and in person. These means that these events had 15 or more people attend and over 20 likes on Instagram. And this particular examples were all placed on Instagram. So it's the idea, if you look at them, they're very quick, there's not a lot of reading, and they're very visual pleasing to the eye. Those are things to incorporate when you're looking to gain social capital. Because without that social capital, we're not going to get teens to look at our page. So not only is it understanding we need to use social media, it's understanding how to use social media that's going to allow us to gain what we need to get teen interest and engagement. So the second part of this is incorporating program into your libraries. So while marketing is incorporating social media, program is about creating social media within a social environment. So with that in mind, it's the idea that marketing, as we said, is incorporating, we want to create. And this is because it helps teens to plan for the future and better interact with the world. If they're interacting through social media, they're going to want the skills to create and make those interactions. And it does so in 3 ways. It teaches tech skills when you incorporate social media into a program. Additionally, it acts as an opportunity for teens to share interests, passions, and ideas of their own. This is the idea of that social environment that we were talking to. And it also helps them to stay in tune with the world and environment that they live and experiencing life through. It's one thing to see it, it is another thing to be able to engage with it. So creating social media is going to allow us to engage or allow teens to engage with their world. So marketing is us engaging with them, and then programming is about them engaging with the world. So the way that we do that is, first, we need to talk about connective learning. So when designing programs dealing with social media, librarians need to incorporate elements of a connected learning framework, because we keep talking about this social environment. And the reason being is that connecting teens with peers and mentors engages them in interest-driven activities and provides opportunities to build real-world research skills and make connections. Because yet again, peer connections are what drive teens. And these connections are the relationships we have been talking about that are eminent with teens. So connect learning emphasizes creative and social learning experiences that are driven by learners' personal interests. This allows youth to choose their own topics and then intermingle with each other. And he also even states that the program should be interest-based because in order to support connected learning, we need their interest. And it's the idea that not only are we creating this social environment, we are also creating the ability for teens to express themselves. And makerspaces are a great way to do this. So within a makerspace, it is the idea, as the ALL tells us, about how it is a great tool because making engages with technology through a social environment, which in the end sparks curiosity and engages critical thinking. This engages teens, which motivates them to learn. This is especially important since this is the stage of a development where teens are questioning authority and viewpoints. Thus, for this activity, they are interacting and relying on each other about the decisions they are making for an activity such as making videos or posting graphics. And this reflects the idea that teens seek out their relationships with experimentation and experiences, which is why it's such an essence of connective learning. It's the idea that teens learn by interacting with each other, and through that relationships with each other, they are experimenting and figuring out the boundaries and who they are as people through their interactions. So being able to make something and do it in this social environment is going to motivate and push them and allow them to grow. And in this instance, with making grow, it's a growth with technology. So tech programs. Question, how do we incorporate these tech programs? So we've talked about making sure that however we set it up, it needs to be in a social environment with that connective learning activity. And another thing to keep in mind is budget has been a concern. So I have found some affordable software that is free for teens to use. This includes Canva, which is overall my favorite. Has a free version that allows for graphic designing and video making, which makes it one of the most versatile programs. There is also Vimo and Powtoon, which are both great. However, they do have limited free qualities for first-time users, and overall not extremely pricey, but for a teen who may not have funds to themselves or learning with them, or a library that has a budget to work with, Canva may be the better way to go. And Vimo and Powtoon are both video making softwares to keep in mind. So an example that I've done that I kind of want to show you is I did something called a hashtag fractured tech tale.
Call me a saint, but you know I'm a stranger, all willing and able to do what you want. You think I'm a thinker, but I'm just a singer, all busy and pretty, just making.
These are examples of a makerspace that I did with a bunch of teens. I set up a computer lab with laptops with teens facing each other, so I kind of put them in a big circle, and after a book talk about Own Voices Fractured Fairy Tales, the teens were directed to create a TikTok or YouTube video about an Own Voices fairy tale of their choice. And what this did is this engaged teens with technology and their peers. It's the idea with the connective learning, I sparked a conversation among them. What does Own Voices mean to them? What is the idea of what they want to see? How do they want to be representative? And then they use that tech skills to take that social connection that they were building and put it in a digital format that they could post online. So I taught them the skills to post something online to spark a conversation about something that they're interested in. That is their platform of social connection and engagement we have been talking about. So additionally, with that in mind, you got to keep in mind the social media platforms that you're using. And the reason being is because teens use platforms for different reasons. If they are looking for videos or something that they want to watch, they may be using TikTok and YouTube because those are video making platforms. They may just be looking, before I believe we talked about power browsers, they just want a quick glance at look at something because maybe they're just scrolling. They're probably going to be using Instagram and Twitter. And this is really important to keep in mind when you're teaching classes. And the reason being is because there is an overlapping skill between platforms. Some may just deal with text. Some may just deal with video making. Some may just deal with graphic design. So what I would suggest is if you're doing a text series, I would start with a beginner class that deals with one skill. So deal with graphic design or deal with video making, and then progress to intermediate to master classes that deal with overlapping skills. You are giving teens the very basic and you're growing from there. So you are building a rapport and a relationships with teens when you're dealing with social media. You're interacting with them. What do they like? What are they watching? And you're teaching them the skills of how they can incorporate that online. And that's what they care about. That is what's going to be getting teens into your program and into your services because that is what they're looking for. So overall, technology is not going anywhere. It's evolving and we need to evolve with it or we may lose our connection with teens altogether. Social media is essential to any type of relationship with them. And for a group that is based off of relationships, we need to have relationships with them. And it can explore and flourish a wonderful alliance with teens with incorporating social media. It allows them to be makers, which means allows them to embrace a culture of experimentation and innovation, which is the overall goal that we want to have. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you learned something from this.